Good afternoon. Half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Monday, May 17, and the time now is 2 o'clock. Notice for this budget hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, May 10th. Second notice was on May 13th. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 55-36 COR, the fiscal year 2021 Appropriation Act as requested by the Governor relative to the University of Guam fiscal year 2022 budget request. I'd like to announce my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon, We have the Oversight Chair of the University of Guam, Senator Amanda Sheldon, and her Vice Speaker, Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes. Also, we have Senator Telo Taidegui, Senator Tony Dueñas, Tony Ada, and Chris Dueñas. I apologize, Tony. We also have in the panel today, we have Dr. Kreis, Dr. Anita Enriquez, Randy Wiegand is here, and Richard, or Mark Duarte. Okay. General rules of this budget hearing shall be, those testifying on behalf of Bill 55-36 CR relative to the University of Guam are invited to the panel. You have been invited. You are now seated. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopy. Testimony may be read. Length of testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes, but I know you're going to need a little bit more time, Dr. Kreis. We're going to allow you that time. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by the members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance of this hearing, which is your budget hearing of the University of Guam. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceeding. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. You please state your name and your title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel from the University of Guam to rise and for our sergeant arms to please swear them in.
Kindly raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. Dr. Kreis, we will begin with you for your testimony. I know you've submitted a written testimony, and we're going to go ahead and assume you're going to go ahead and read it and maybe add to it. Dr. Kreis, and I think you've got some slides you wanted to present also. Are you going to do it at that time when you're presenting? Okay.
Thank you, Senator. So I thought I would submit the written testimony, but then narrate these slides orally. So I won't read the written testimony, but I'll submit that for your perusal. It's basically same material, but I think it might be more interesting to follow the slideshow.
All right, thank you. I also like to thank our colleagues, Speaker Terlai, for joining us. And we have Senator Perez walking in right now. Sergeant Arms, and we get the folks to go ahead and turn on the slides. Go ahead, Dr. Kreis.
Honorable Senators, thank you for this opportunity to present the University of Guam's budget. As I just said, the written testimony has been submitted, but I'd like to present this slideshow. We've had the opportunity to meet, I think, with everybody here in a one-on-one opportunity, so you've heard a lot of this material, and we have more material if you'd like and questions. We have some other things presented for you if you'd like. And joining me, of course, are Vice President for Administration and Finance, Randy Wiegand, the Senior Vice President and Provost, Dr. Anita Borja Enriquez, and Mr. Mark Duarte, the Director of the Student Financial Aid Budget. And then out in the foyer, we have a number of deans and other administrators ready to answer any questions that you might have. So on the budget slide presentation, this year, of course, has been the pandemic, and I just wanted to highlight the university's involvement, engagement with the island community during this pandemic. And so the healthcare workforce has been particularly highlighted, and we've been very proud of the School of Health and the nursing program, as well as faculty, staff, and students from across the university for helping in every way that we could think of to help. This next week, we will be graduating 33 new Bachelor of Science in Nursing students. We have 25 nursing aides who are finishing their temporary nursing assistant program, which was developed during the pandemic to allow for a rapid increase in the healthcare workforce. And that group of people are also able to finish their CNA and then move on to employment after the pandemic is over. So that helps in terms of addressing the recession as well. 26 nursing graduates joined the workforce 1 month early last May, so we had that whole cohort finished early and then were on the front lines of the pandemic a month ahead of time. So that was great work by our faculty and staff to make that possible, as well as the students. We have 10 combat medics from the Guam National Guard who are trained in acute care, and they're deployed to the 2 hospitals. We have 41 social work, counseling, and clinical psychology graduates produced since the Fanyumnakan 2020 commencement of last May. And we have 113 declared majors in the Bachelor of Social Work and the Master's Level Counseling and Clinical Psychology programs. So this is just on the healthcare front, the university's response. The next one is, of course, helping Guam get tested and vaccinated. And so this has been a tremendous effort by, particularly by Carlos Taitano, the head of our Global Learning and Engagement operation, marshaling volunteers from across the university and around the community. So 200 people have been trained for contact tracing, which, as you know, is a fairly high percentage of the population for a territory our size. Have 130 nursing, social work, and health science students who have assisted with call centers and COVID testing and vaccinations. 100% of our nursing faculty have assisted with COVID testing, vaccinations, contact tracing, call centers, and other activities. 77% of our School of Health faculty have assisted in relief efforts beyond academic teaching. We've had 1,000 volunteer hours from the ROTC cadets toward vaccinating Guam, and some cadets volunteered for more than 40 hours. And we've had 300 residents of the freely associated states vaccinated through UOG's Geriatrics Workforce Enhancement Program. And then we've also participating in the effort to vaccinate the homeless. So those are some of the ways that the university has responded to the pandemic, and we continue to assist with advice on economic diversification, ways to sort of figure out new ways to diversify our economy, and also just to be able to come out of this pandemic. Another field that I just wanted to call your attention to is the area of developing new industries. And so the university has been doing this, and particular highlight is on our aquaculture facility in Manila, just north of the campus. So that public-private partnership with Core Seed Incorporated is producing over 1,000 pounds of pathogen-free shrimp a month at the Fishermen's Co-op and in retail, as well as fresh and saltwater tilapia. And I should point out that this industry is particularly noted for this pathogen-free brood stock. And so that's a significant part of the business model for this operation. And so it's partly to develop food supplies for us here in Guam, but also to encourage new aquaculture facilities and help begin that, as well as supplying this brood stock to Southeast Asian aquaculture facilities that need to upgrade the quality of their shrimp, particularly. So that's the first public-private partnership that we've had, and it's closely tied to our federal research program over the past four decades. And the comment on developing new industries is important to our economic impact to Guam. And so I think you've all seen the report from 2019 that showed that UOG injects $349 million into Guam's economy before the pandemic in 2019. We've created 1 of every 15 jobs in Guam, 1 of every $17 in Guam's economy. and 13% of Gov Guam's tax revenues. So we can certainly get you more copies of this report if you'd like more detail, but I just wanted to call attention that the appropriation that you give to the university is really the foundation that allows us to be able to generate this tax revenue, this economic activity for the island. So just to emphasize the investment value of your appropriation. And the next slide goes to our budget request, and so we're very cognizant of this year being especially hard for all of us and for all of you making decisions about funding. And so even though last year's budget, operations budget was really, really hard for us, we're asking for a flat budget compared to last year of $26.06 million. And then for the Student Financial Assistance Program, along with the university's budget, which has been in decline over several years now, so has the Student Financial Assistance Program. So this is an increase, a slight increase over the previous year, but it's an attempt to try to deal with the pandemic and to try to be able to ensure students can get into programs in education and nursing and social work, perhaps in ProTech if we can have some funds for that. So those are some of the reasons for this. And we're finding that the merit program is squeezing out other aspects, other categories of student financial assistance. And if you have questions on that, we have Mark Duarte, who's particularly expert on this. And then we have, of course, several special funds that the university, projects that the university carries out on behalf of Gov Guam. And so one of those, of course, is, oh, sorry, that's a special, I forgot one thing ahead of that, is the Restoring the Capital Improvement Fund. So one other category that we're asking for is a resumption of the $1.16 million debt service for the School of Engineering and the Student Success Center. So it's a long story, but we had received the loan from the USDA. 2 years ago, they de-obligated that. So the legislature had paid it, then stopped paying it when it was de-obligated, and we're pleased now that they have re-obligated it. So we're asking for that to be resumed as it was before the de-obligation. So that's that one. Now moving to the special appropriations. So examples of the special appropriations that we manage on behalf of Gov Guam include WERI, the Water and Environmental Research Institute, as well as the shrimp hatchery. And then in brackets there is a special new one that we've called attention to, which is the Guam Cultural Repository. So the University of Guam is a partner in this project, several different agencies of Gov Guam involved in this project, and so it's being built on our campus. The plans call for the University of Guam to manage this facility on behalf of the partnership and in close collaboration with the Guam Museum and the Department of Chamorro Affairs. And so because it's with us and we're managing it, we're the ones asking for it, but we want to make sure that this doesn't get confused with our basic appropriation. So $1.46 million is the figure in your budgets. It's actually come up a bit from that as we've been able to figure out more elements. I'm happy to have a separate conversation at the end of this if you'd like to raise questions about that. We can provide more detail about the Guam Cultural Repository, but that's all I'll say at the moment about that. And then moving on to some highlights about UOG. So it's a big, complex organization, lots of people, an incredible array of positive things coming out of your University of Guam. And we'd just like to call your attention to some of these so that you appreciate the investment that you're making. We do believe that UOG is a key to Guam's economic recovery from this pandemic recession. We've emphasized the research funding that we've had, and I think even inside the university, people aren't as aware as we should be about how unusually substantial the research that we're doing and the amount of federal funding we're getting for that research is. So there are 902 universities in the whole country that receive federal research grants from the National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health. UOG is probably number 898 in terms of size. We're almost the smallest university in that crowd, but we are among the top 250 universities for the dollar amount of federal research that's being carried out. So it's an amazing achievement. This is decades of effort, decades of your support for the basic appropriation that's allowed this to happen. And that's a significant portion of the money that we're bringing to Guam's economy and the kinds of things, the kinds of problems we're able to address and answer. Also, just as an example, one of our research activities, of course, is WERI. And our WERI, the Water and Environmental Research Institute, is one of 54 of these around the country. And the national organization that runs this collects the top 12. They don't rank them 1 to 12, but they just say these 12 are the best in the country, and our WERI is among those 12. Another nice point of pride is we've just right before the recession, our last public event before the lockdown was the institution of a new chapter at UOG of the National Honor Society called Phi Kappa Phi. This is the top students in every discipline there is. So that's the attraction of it, is it covers everybody. And so we launched it right before the pandemic, and then in the very first year of its existence, it wound up winning an award for being one of the best chapters in the country, which I think is a great testament to our students in the middle of the pandemic and our faculty for advising them through that. We've also, as I've emphasized, the support that the university's provided for the response to COVID-19 at every level that we can think of, I think has been a point of pride and a highlight for the university of the past year. And then also, I think, to emphasize how much UOG continues to meet the workforce needs of Guam. And then I have a couple of slides here on how we've spent the federal relief money that we've had so far. And so these two slides just cover the two CARES Act funds. It doesn't include the American Rescue Plan funds that aren't quite clarified yet exactly how that is. But I'm starting here with the university was a conduit. Mark Duarte actually was the conduit for some direct aid to college students. And so $2.28 million was delivered to students directly in 2 different tranches there in those 2 semesters. And then this includes coverage for some rebates, waived fees, and reimbursements. And then also, unusually, UOG also used some of our institutional funds to help either reduce or defray costs for students. So that was fairly unusual, but that's a reflection of our concern for our students, where 47% of them are Pell Grant recipients, so that's from fairly financially challenged situations. And in the pandemic, we weren't very clear on which, some people sort of did fine all the way through the pandemic. Their jobs could be done remotely and they've kept them up. Other people completely lost their incomes. And so even trying to figure out who was really Pell eligible and who wasn't in the middle of all that was fairly chaotic. So we did a lot to disperse some extra funds to students directly through our institutional funds. And that was fairly unusual by the national standard. So the next slide then shows that $3.5 million was this direct grant aid from the institutional portion to students. And then you see these categories. A lot of this had to do with IT kinds of things to help us be able to do the online teaching, figure out how to do it better, training faculty how to do it. So we had student support for $496,000, faculty support for online training and tech support at $585,000, institutional support, which included some lost revenues, support for remote operations of $586,000, almost $9 million for institutional equipment, mostly IT and software, and then $1.62 million for campus safety and operations. So that's just to give you sort of a rundown on those figures, and we can certainly let you know how the ARP funds work out as soon as we have the rules clearly figured out on that. So then just some closing thoughts we do believe that UOG is a proven revenue generator for Gov Guam and an economic driver for our total economy. And we do believe that an investment in UOG yields a strong return. So the amount of tax revenue that we generate is 3 times the level of our current basic appropriation. So we're not merely an expense, we're generating tax revenue for everybody else as well. So we'd like to remind everybody of that investment quality. And then please do commit to appropriating any additional funding during the year, just to recognize that we hope that this is the end year for this disinvestment in the University of Guam that's been happening for a number of years, and that we begin to crawl out of that. And I think I've emphasized to each of you individually that once we restore the sort of base level of funding that we built the university on over decades, that you don't have to worry about sort of an ever-increasing rise in that figure beyond adjustments to inflation. That's the one, we can get that basic funding, we can do amazing things with it. And you've seen the university do amazing things with the funding that you provide. And it's just now, after multiple years of this decline, where it's becoming difficult. And so many of our funders are looking at our situation and wondering how long is this going to be sustained. Even in the USDA loan, trying to get that reaffirmed, there were questions raised about the degree of support from Gov Guam for the university. So it isn't just us, it isn't just our worry. There are people making loans, people making grants, accreditors are also concerned. So we beg you to consider a reinvestment in the university back up to the level before the last 5 years of decline. And we will, no matter what, we will continue to operate the best we can with the resources we've been provided. And we think our response in the pandemic has given some indication of our ability and willingness to do that. So, Situts Masi, honorable senators, and happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kreis. Do you have, does the University of Guam have any outstanding personnel services obligations? Salary increments, pay adjustment, reclassification. Do you have any outstanding? Yes or no?
Just waiting for him.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we don't.
You don't? Okay, great. Okay, are there any preparation, or has UOG opened the face-to-face classes already, or not yet?
So we plan to on the 1st of June, so the beginning of the FINACPO summer sessions, it will be open to students in face-to-face. There'll be 3 different formats, and Dr. Enriquez could elaborate if she'd like to. So we've got face-to-face, hybrid, where it's a mixture of online and in-person, and high flex, which is a mixture of at the same class, some are online and some are in person. So some of the limitations we have, of course, are the 6-foot distancing, which is still required for higher education, even while the 3-foot is allowed for K through 12. So we're still dealing with that kind of space problem. And so it makes a big difference to how many people you can put in a room. So we are planning then for the summer and then into the Panatsanan semester, August to December, anticipating steady movement to more normal face-to-face operations.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kreis. Student enrollment during the 2021, how's it been, and what are your projections for 2022?
I think I'll ask Dr. Enriquez to remark on that. We have had some dip because of the pandemic, but it's not as bad as some institutions.
Yes, Masi. We noticed that the enrollment from fall 2020 to spring of 2021 had dropped by 457 students. This does not include the 200 plus students who had graduated in December of 2020. So that was a significant drop. We are monitoring the fall or Fanunsanan 2021 registration. So far, as of close of business, May 14th, we are looking at 1,092, which compares to 1,458 last year. So we're seeing a drop of 26%. And so we continue to monitor that. We recognize the importance of bringing our students back. So that's what we have so far. Thank you.
Dr. Enriquez, when you say 26%, can you give me the number?
Okay, so
You say 1,000, then you say 410, so you're saying 400.
For this current semester, coming from last semester, we saw a drop of 457 students.
Okay.
And monitoring our registration, early registration for the upcoming fall semester, we are down 26%. And we compared last year, late spring, for the early registration for the fall 2020, which was at 1,458, compared to the same day today at 1,092.
All right.
And if I could just add that this is, we're graduating the largest class in history on Sunday, the 23rd, this coming Sunday. And so one advance that we've had is we're improving our graduation rate. So a declining number of people who actually persist all the way to graduation sort of offsets a little bit of the drop in the number, in the absolute number, so.
All right, and congratulations on you meeting the history. Congratulations. Dr. Kreis, have you procured the majority of your budget for supplies and equipment for the year based on 2021? How's it look so far? Because on your letter, you're thankful that DOA is giving you
Yes.
money consistently every week, and that's a great news to hear.
We are very, very pleased, and we thank you, the legislature, for the law requiring the regular appropriation of regular delivery of the allotments of our appropriation. So we have been getting 1/52nd of your appropriation every week since you passed that. So that's been a tremendous benefit, particularly to Randy and to Rachel Kubicub and everybody managing budgets. So we thank Ed Byrne and the governor for carrying that out. Thank you for being the initiative behind it. So that has been a huge help. Thank you.
And just to add, we didn't have a lot of equipment in our budget. It's been a pretty lean budget, so it's primarily payroll is what we're using the funds for.
Okay, so you're saying you have a lot of equipment in your budget? Am I correct, Randy? That's what you said? You
There's
have
not a lot. There's not a lot of equipment.
There's not a lot. Oh, not a lot. Thank you. Appreciate that. My next question is actually focused towards the status on your capital outlay projects being implemented in FY 2021, leaning into 2022. Where are you at with those? I think that's the Students Success Center, your Engineering Annex, and the Guam Cultural Repository.
Yes,
Where are we at
Senator.
with
So we have a total of 7 kind of physical things that have been going on recently. One is we bought a private house in Dean Circle that's added to our capacity. We built a wing, an extra wing on the Science Center, so that's 4 big sort of labs and classrooms. And then we have the Student Success Center and the School of Engineering Annex. Those are now funded under the USDA loan, which is now really going ahead. And then we are very pleased to get a fairly extraordinary $8.6 million from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to build a new nursing facility. So that'll be a 12,000 square foot addition to the nursing facility. And then we'll be able to do a 15,000 square foot, 3-story building to house Weary right across from the English Language Institute in Dean Circle, right in that grassy parking lot is where that plans to go. And then that will allow the Marine Lab to move into Weary's old place, so there'll be some cascading benefits from those. And what else am I missing? Oh, and the Cultural Repository is very close to, we expect that to be finished around Christmas time. And you can see the 2-story, 2 levels, the walls are all the way up now, so it's really quite advanced. And happy to talk more about that.
Sorry, the annex and the student center.
Right, and the annex and the student center, so those will move ahead with the USDA loan.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kreis. Only one touchy issue I have is before the pandemic, biggest issue was the tuition increase. Where are we at on that, and where does UOG stand with that when you're losing students?
Yeah, so the Board of Regents authorized me as president to implement a increase in the tuition to compensate for declining appropriations. So we delayed the implementation. So I was authorized to go no faster than once a semester and then no higher than 5% each time. But I was allowed to delay or reduce the amount. So because of the pandemic, and as I mentioned before, the impact on families, and we have a lot of people who were fine before the recession and the pandemic who are now in trouble because, a whole industry is is basically not operating during all of this, and many other parts of the economy are affected. So anyway, so we've delayed some of those. We've used some of the CARES Act money, such as I mentioned, the institutional portion, to waive or to pay for some increases in different fees and so on. So we basically tried to keep it as much the same before the pandemic as possible. So, but we retain the authority to continue that as we sort of figure it that we're able to do so. So,
All right, so Dr. Christ, would it be safe to say that based on your budget requests, if you were fortunate enough that this body was to bless your budget request, are we still going to look at a tuition increase? Let's see how we can tie that into what you're asking.
Yeah, we've built in a 5% increase for the beginning of fall semester.
so August.
No, answer the question. Are you going to do a tuition increase to the students if you get your budget requests
The
in?
student
That's what I need to know,
yes.
yes or no?
A tuition increase has already been approved for August, so it's already in the schedule. So it's part of what we calculated to be able to ask for the flat budget. In order to ask for a flat budget, it's already scheduled in there. What we've done in the previous cases is delay the schedule. It's still approved, though, for August. So there will be an increase of 5% in August of this year.
Okay, thank you. Senator Amanda Sheldon, do you have any questions? The Oversight Chair for the University of Guam, followed by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz, then followed by the Speaker. Senator Amanda?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here today. On the note of the tuition increase, is there a number that you can provide us if we were to delay the tuition increase, that 5%, by another semester or a calendar year? Is that a number that you can provide us with today?
Sure.
Yeah, we could get a number to you.
Okay, thank you. I think that'll help us
Sure.
moving forward. But also, I'd like to congratulate you, the University of Guam, on your newest Economic Development Administration Grant Award to construct the nursing building and the second building for Weary, which will be the only comprehensive water testing lab in the Micronesian region. So that's a really great accomplishment from the University of Guam. Congratulations to you. And I thank you for the time that you spent meeting with every senator to explain the budget and to ask for what is needed at UOG to continue serving the students and the future workforce of Guam. Last term, at the end of the 35th Guam legislature, we passed the 21st Century Bill. And this was a bill to help the University of Guam be more financially stable, to diversify revenue streams. In addition to the aquaculture facility that you shared with us today in the presentation, what are some other programs or initiatives that the university is pursuing based on your authorization from the 21st Century Bill, and how can we see it in effect in this new budget?
Thank you, Senator. And the 21st Century Bill was a really big boost to the university and its ability to really be a 21st century university. So in addition to the public-private partnerships you mentioned, I'll have Randy Wiegand remark on the first one that we're planning under that category. We're also able to hire more students for jobs on campus, which we think is important for their completion. So studies have shown that students who work on campus finish at a higher rate than people who work off campus, so there's an advantage there. We're also pleased to be able to have this new category of employee, the professional technical category that will allow us particularly to deal with cybersecurity, which is a very hot topic internationally at the moment, and we've of course been attacked ourselves, and so we really need to beef up our capacity there, and this will help us to do that. So Randy could remark on the first of these public-private partnerships that we're working on.
Yeah, we do have a project where we're working with Guam Power Authority and Siemens Corporation to try and reduce the footprint of electrical usage on campus. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a kickoff for an investment grade audit where they're bringing engineers to try and confirm the savings that they've calculated. The plan is for them to provide us the results of the investment grade audit in the fall. It will be either September or October timeframe. So we're not going to have results or know what potential savings are until that point. So we don't have that reflected in the budget. But we're pleased that this is giving us an opportunity to change out a lot of older, less efficient air conditioning equipment and put in more efficient that's going to lower our energy footprint overall.
Okay, thank you very much. I do understand that it'll take some time for us to see the benefits of many of these projects, but we look forward to them here in the legislature. And on the topic of the student financial assistance programs, you've requested a total of $4.3 million for these scholarships and financial aid. Is this inclusive of all merit scholars, and will this allow you to open up to previously or scholarships that have been put on hold for some time? Is this an amount large enough to cover all merit scholars, incoming merit scholars, and perhaps maybe the pro-tech, the nursing, social work scholarships?
I think I'll have Mark Duarte answer that, but I think the answer is it's a modest improvement in that direction.
Alfred, thank you for the question, Senator. Yes, right now the merit scholarship takes up about $2 million of our current appropriation. So a $4 million appropriation to us would cover not only merit, but also all of the other programs that we have. Currently, we are not awarding pro-tech, as we don't have enough funds. We are awarding nursing. We have not awarded social work. And we only have a small portion of students under the Yamashita Teacher Corps. But we do award Doc Sanchez and all of their other programs. But those big programs like the social work and the pro-tech are currently not being funded due to the shortage of funds. But merit is included.
Okay, so with this amount at $4.3 million, we have $2 million for merit, and the remaining $2.3 million will be for spread out through all these other scholarships.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I also like to mention for the committee, for the public, and for the University of Guam, everyone in this legislature signed on to a letter to the governor listing our priorities for the American Rescue Plan monies that Guam will receive, and prioritizing the University of Guam scholarship funds, direct student aid at a total of $7 million. So we hope that this will go to the University of Guam. The governor did say that she is also in support of these types of programs and distribution. So we hope that that'll be an additional service to our students.
Thank you,
Okay. That's really all for me. My questions right now, Mr. Chair. I'll give our colleagues an opportunity to ask some things. I wanted to thank you all, especially the faculty and staff who've worked throughout the pandemic, everyone at UOG who have stood up these new programs, the telethon, the vaccination center, our nursing program, the nursing students who have expedited their studies to be able to join the workforce and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are so extremely proud and thankful for everything that you're doing. And of course, congratulations in advance to the graduates of 2021. Sidious Masi, everyone.
Thank you, Senator Amanda. Senator Tina, Vice Speaker, do you have any questions?
Sidious Masi, Mr. Chair, thank you for giving me the opportunity to state my comments and ask some questions. And at this time, I want to extend my thank yous to Dr. Christ, Dr. Enriquez, Dean Camacho, I know he's out there, and the Chief of Staff, David Okada, for your briefing on April 5th, which is a month ago. As we look at the economic recovery and look at diversifying our industries, I want to say investing in short-term solutions are very important to deal with this year of the economic downturn. And for me, investing in education is a long-term investment that doesn't depreciate and only continues to multiply. So with that being said, under the previous administrations, I understand that the allotments were withheld, and I'm very grateful that this current administration respects the will of this body and allocates funding that we passed in the budget to the University of Guam in a timely manner. And to the UOG leadership, I appreciate your understanding the financial status that we are in, and I believe, freezing the hiring of 40-plus open positions in increments that are still in play today. And I've always said I'm not going to pretend to be smarter than any of you here today, but the successes of UOG will speak for itself, and I myself wish I had the opportunity to attain that world-class education, but the good Lord had many other plans for me, and now I try to take the opportunity to go online classes each semester, and slowly but surely I know I would get there. But looking at your proposal and my notes there, I want to share with you that I do have 4 things that I would like to discuss. Maybe you can share some thoughts or even more insights based on a couple of answers that were just noted a little bit earlier. From the nursing perspective, Dr. Kreis, or to anyone in the panel, there is a global shortage of nurses, and I appreciate that UOG has stepped up during this pandemic, but what can we do so that we can increase the capacity of the nursing program? I know that you talked about the facility. Is there anything more you'd like to add on that?
Thank you, Senator. I'll ask Dr. Enriquez to remark a little more, but I know that from the nursing School of Health position, the 2 constraining factors are faculty and facilities. And so in terms of faculty, where Dean Margaret Hattori-Uchima is pretty well situated for her faculty, and of course it's extraordinary faculty, and it's been facilities has been the real limiting factor up till now. So the 12,000 square foot addition from the EDA will help us in that regard, and so that's probably take 2 years, I think, to get 2 years to get that in place. And then I do, many of the investments that you remark on about the value of investing in education, some of the investments take a while before they show up. And so if we can increase the number of nurses we produce locally, and we do as well as any place. I mean, we have a very high pass rate for our nursing graduates, so it's a very good program. And so if we can increase that number, then you all can stop spending so much money on the travel nurse program, the world's most expensive nurses. And so that money then will stay here in Guam, it'll circulate here, we'll have very high quality people who have a commitment to our community. So I think that's one of the examples of that kind of investment. So it'll be facilities, we'll need, there'll be some issues about equipment and, lab equipment and beds and mannequins and what they call them, not mannequins. All those kinds of things will be some additional expenses that we'll be needing once the facility is finished. But we're very hopeful that with this expanded facility, we'll be able to do quite a few more nurses. So.
Thank you. Dr. Enriquez, would you like to add?
That? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Senator. The pipeline for our healthcare majors, all of these fall under the School of Health, in which Dr. Margaret Hattori-Uchima leads as dean. And so we have a total of 85 current nursing majors, but of that number, we have sophomores who are not covered under the local student financial assistance program. Those are 23 sophomores to augment the 33 juniors and the 29 seniors. So because of the lack of funding, it does create a challenge, a financial challenge for those who are earlier in that pipeline, at least at the sophomore level. We also have 46 social work majors at the senior and junior level. As you know, because of the mental health response need in our community, social workers are very critical in that particular arena. We also have 101 declared health science majors. but there is absolutely no funding available in the SFAP account for these particular students. This doesn't include our Master in Clinical Psychology majors. They as well have been part of the response to this healthcare crisis. And again, all of these are very critical, and we just wanted to bring this to light. Thank you.
Maybe the next question I want to just add further to that is there any collaboration with any additional grant funding or any other resources that we can get? I know that as we look at that pipeline and the need for resources there, is there anything else the university is looking toward or forward for on this? So, Randy, would you like, do you have a comment to that?
I was just going to say that we just got this large grant from the Economic Development Administration. That was something big that has really moved the ball forward on this. I'm not aware of other
Pell
other
Grant would be
initiatives.
the other significant contribution, and there's talk in DC, of course, about increasing the Pell Grant perhaps fairly substantially. And as I say, we have 47% of our students on Pell Grant. So if there's more money there, that will make it more possible. But the Student Financial Aid Program is kind of our principal way of encouraging and supporting students going into critical needs, fields for critical need. And so obviously that's money well spent. And if we really want to stop spending $7 or $8 million a year on travel nurses, this kind of an investment would pay off. It won't pay off in the same year. That's the problem. It takes several years to produce a first-class nurse, so it takes a little while. But we do have to have that steady investment over time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and move into scholarships then. I appreciate the information that was provided by Chief Okada to us in the April session. I see there have been cuts to the assistance we provide to students through the local appropriations, and I know that FASA and other federal programs are still available, and I know earlier the oversight chair had asked specifically about some of the locally funded programs, like ProTech and the Doc Sanchez and the nursing and social work programs. But as we focus on pandemic response, we need to keep in mind the importance of investing in human capital, and I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of this. And I think, Mark, you noted earlier that there were some programs that we did not fund today. Can you reiterate on that and maybe something that maybe we as policymakers can look into, because this was something that has been afforded in the past and has been very successful, and just hearing now that it may not be provided today is what can we do together to work on this? So, if you may.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. The appropriations that we received, which is about $3 million, including the $250,000 for the first generation trust fund, $2 million of that was for the merit scholarship. So the remaining amount, we wanted to make sure that we always prioritize nursing. So the nursing students, all of the juniors and seniors that wanted the scholarship have been funded. But the limitation, of course, is that we couldn't fund ProTech. That was one of the big ones. Because once we award a student, we want to make sure that we award them for the duration of the program, which would be 4 years. So we looked at the funds that we had, and we did prioritize those for the merit, as I mentioned, and in the nursing program, region scholarships that we have, and some of the other programs that, like Doc Sanchez for our Gov Guam employees, and program. So the ones that we didn't fund was the social work, a part of YEC, or the Yamashita Teacher Corps, and a program that we had last fiscal year, which was UOG retention and completion program. But most of the other programs that we had, we did fund.
So, I'm sorry, I just want to be clear. So did we fund the ProTech program?
No, we did not.
And how long has it been since we funded the Protect program?
The last person that we paid under Protect was 3 semesters ago.
What amount are we looking at that for this scholarship? Because I know that this takes the opportunity to pay for those in the medical arena and then for them to come home after they finish their residency. So what are we looking, how much are we looking at on an annual basis that we used to afford?
Yeah, so the Protect for non-medical fields, it's $20,000 a year for 4 years. And for medical fields, it's $35,000 a year for 4 years.
And, if I
And
could-
then the payback, sorry, Mr. President, the payback is $10,000. For every $10,000, you have to work 1 year on Guam.
Okay, thank you, Mark. On the entrepreneurship, I want to say to you folks that I was honored to be the keynote speaker for the recent Startup Week in Micronesia event at the UOG hosted, and public speaking is usually an easy task for me, but for me, I want to tell you guys that it was really, really different. I remember it was late on a Friday night, and I had a family function to attend, and I thought it would be a quick 5-10 minutes in and out and on Zoom, so that it was a Zoom event. But the students who participated, after I finished my 5-minute speech, they kept me there for over an hour asking me all types of questions, and it seemed to me that these young adults are really excited to learn from to learn all about entrepreneurship. And for me as a policymaker, I think it makes mathematical sense to invest in these programs so that they can make money, they create jobs, and they pay taxes. So I appreciate what you're doing there, Dr. Christ, Dr. Enriquez, Dr. Santos, and one who's also volunteered a lot was Dr. James G. I didn't know he had volunteered for the Public Policy Institute here, working with the students that were on the last cohort and coming into the other one. But this program was really, really successful. My question is, are these programs covered under this current budget? And what can we do to better improve this in this arena? I want to share with you that I did submit it in my recommendation for the American Rescue Plan as an incubator type program, as I committed to the students when they asked me, and I literally took the time to speak to the governor last week, and also will be working with Gita, the former First Lady, and then of course GVB with former Governor Gutierrez to see how we can continue to make this happen. And I want to share with you that I hope I can count on your continued support to make programs like this a success. I don't know if many of the folks in the listening audience know that this program is very strong. And I just had to say I was impressed, and if there's any comments you have regarding this program and continuing it forward.
Others might have something to contribute, but I'd say that much of those kinds of programs are funded. I mean, the basic structure is we pay the salaries of the faculty. We're on a pay scale that's 12 years out of date now, so that's one of our problems. But anyway, we pay their salaries out of the base appropriation, and then some aspects of those kinds of programs would come from non-appropriated funds, such as tuition. So some of those programs run that way. And did you want to add anything about, that's basically how such programs are run. It's really anchored on the faculty, and so the basic support for the faculty comes in the form of the base appropriation that you all provide. That's really the foundation of all of those programs, is in their intellectual capacity and energy and commitment to the program.
So we advocate. Dr. Enriquez, please.
Thank you, Madam Senator. I just wanted to add that the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the School of Business and Public Administration has a NINA called the Bank of Hawaii, And so they do provide funding to support some of the basic needs of that center. Dr. James G. is currently overseeing that particular center, hence his involvement with the Startup Weekend. There is a nice leverage partnership with the Guam Small Business Development Center, also in concert with entities such as GITA, as well as the Guam Unique Merchandise and Art. And so it's just a matter of taking a look at all the ecosystem of support. President Christ is correct in terms of faculty serving as sort of that the foundation for how all of these initiatives take place. And if there's an opportunity to supplement their work, especially over the summertime or beyond, their teaching, research, and service responsibilities, then we try to pull all we can. But a lot of these as well, the students are amazing. A lot of this as well is student-driven. So it's a testimony to just the capacity and certainly the amazing capabilities of our students here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Enriquez. And like I said, this program I felt was very successful, and it was student-driven, and I'm just hoping that we could get more support. I do have one more question, Mr. Chair, regarding cultural repository. And as committed in our meeting, I would look into this matter. I am the chairman of the Guam Build-Up, and I think it's important that we place we have a place to store remnants of our past so that our children can learn about their heritage. I had submitted the request for the American Rescue Plan to cover this important initiative, and I will also be working closely with the Guam Build-Up Office to see how we can use the funds from the Office of Economic Adjustment, and I want to see if we can get any of the federal funds set aside for the arts, humanities. I also understand that you have been working with the Lieutenant Governor on this, and he shared with me his commitment to see this through. So I want to say we're looking at all angles to this, and if you have any updates on any programs, could you please feel free to share that, especially since the facility is done and we need to move forward with,
Thank you, Senator. Just thinking about the presentation that we gave to you about the cultural repository, I think the main reason that the team, the governor at the time, and everybody involved wanted to put the cultural repository on campus rather than inside the fence or somewhere else in Guam was the opportunity to do more than just store the material, to study it, to be able to develop students' capacity for archaeology, for curational studies, for museum studies. We think we can turn it into a small but high-quality program that will serve Guam, all of the Marianas, all of Micronesia. I think it could be a real boon to developing that capacity. So I certainly am happy to support you in any way to try to get other funding, other ways to fund the operation. There will be some fees that the federal government will pay as part of this, so there is some future sort of revenue for this, but it'll still be a fairly significant operation to be able to do this really well. So we're committed to that, and Dean Monique Story, the Dean of the University Libraries, has put together a really good operations manual for how to operate this, and we're trying to hire the first 4 critical employees in time for the opening. Well, we need them to be hired and then trained in time for the opening around Christmas time. So,
thank you. So when is the opening? What is your target date?
July. In July we'll know more, but it looks to be still on schedule for December of this year. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to ask some questions.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, Speaker Terlai, do you have any questions for the panel?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and all of those who are outside as well, ready for questions. Thank you for being here. Just wanted to make sure, when you said that you are asking for a level or a flat appropriation of $26.6 million, however, that is in anticipation of a 5% increase in tuition in the fall. So it's pretty much on the students that are going to be paying for the increases. I guess I'm just disappointed that tuition increase is going through despite all the other, bills that were passed, the measures that you asked for at the university and said that would make you more independent, less reliant on the general funds. And so to hear that, we have to raise tuition in not even maybe, I don't even know if it's even been a year since those bills were passed, that now the tuition's going to be increased. I'm just going to ask you to reconsider that. I think that is, I don't know. I just think of all the things to increase this year, that should not be it. The same thing with the student financial assistance programs, the fact that we are not using it to fund social work, sophomores in nursing programs. You said none of the other health science majors, none of the masters in clinical psychology, and even a reduction in the Yamashita Education Corps, the teachers' scholarships. Very perplexing. I mean, I can see from the reports that you've generated that, you are continuing to give out Triton Athletics scholarships. Regents scholarships are maybe the next largest amount after the merit and the health professionals. And then and I guess, I know that this discretion seems to have been given to UOG in this list, in the budget. However, we know that in the law, we did set out the priorities to be those programs, social work and the healthcare programs especially, and the teachers, right? Because of the need. And so, as one of my colleagues pointed out, we are hoping that, UOG is going to get some of this additional money from Congress. I know you are getting your own amount. We've also asked that you get more. But we really wanted to make sure that it's going to go towards helping these students in these programs that Guam needs. We know we need the nurses, the teachers, and that's what we've asked year after year. And in fact, that priority has not changed. Even the pro-tech, we want doctors. We want them. We need them. We continue to need them. And I don't know. I just, I'm going to, I guess, do a deep dive into this because we talked about it at the last budget. I know that. And you sent the reports. But I guess I'm just disappointed to hear today that you're still planning on moving forward like that without covering any social works. It doesn't make any sense. We're suffering a crisis, of lack of social workers enough to fill the positions at CPS and things like that. So their jobs are available. And, okay, and then the other part is, can you just explain, so on your breakdown, you said 1.16 to restore the capital improvement fund. Could you please explain that? Is this the same thing that was funded at 500,000 in the last? This is in addition to that? Why is that? What is this?
Thank you, Senator. Back in 2012, 2013, the university had been before the legislature trying to seek a funding source for a new student center and an engineering annex. And the student center is just a building at the end of its life. And we wanted to create this engineering program, and we needed a space for teaching. Right. We needed space for labs.
I remember this was funded out of the road fund, the taxes on fuel taxes. And so the legislature then came in and axed that and required the university to fund it on its own. Is that right?
Well, no. It was funded, and it was, so there were appropriations made for 2015, 2016, 2017. But in 2018, we had just submitted our first invoice, and the first invoice was going through USDA in Washington, D.C. for review, and they chose, it's a long story, but they felt like they needed to deobligate the loan and not give us any money. So last year, this year, FY 21, we didn't get an appropriation for that loan. And what could we say? It was deobligated, but we've been working with USDA, and just as of September last year, it was re-obligated. And now we're moving forward, trying to hurry and scurry and get these buildings built. But that was the funding source that was intended for those buildings. And so we're trying to get that capital improvement line item restored also. And we've met with the chairman and explained that for FY 22, we're probably not going to need a lot of money because it's interest only until the buildings are completed. And so we were emphasizing the real need is to have those restored for FY 23.
But when you entered into the agreement with USDA, what was the funding source that you had?
No, it was
pledged?
this. It's always been this. And so
So when, I remember at the time too, I think they transferred some of that land to, so that the endowment, or I don't know, I can't remember it straight, but the endowment foundation could also use it to raise funds. Well, is there any part of this going to be funded by the endowment foundation?
No, when we initially, one of the delays that we encountered on this was that we had just gotten approval from the legislature to move forward with the debt issuance. And then there was another borrowing that got in before us, and the debt ceiling was reached. So we went to the endowment and said, can you help us if we try to finance this creatively where you be the borrower, and we will continue to get this appropriation, and we'll use that to pay you so that you can pay the loan back. So we asked them to get involved just to help us with the creative financing piece. So it's a lease back arrangement where we signed a lease to give them the land, and then we also signed another lease where we would lease the buildings back from them and pay a certain amount over time. But the funding source was always going to be the appropriation from the legislature.
And I could address the questions that you had earlier if you'd like, or do you want more on this subject? You had questions about the public-private partnerships and the tuition and the social work. Would you like me to address those, or do you want more on this subject first?
No, I think my questions are answered. I mean, you stated what your priorities have been with this financial aid funding, and now, yeah, I've heard what the financing arrangement is for the engineering and building and the student center. And I'm aware of the, land transfers that were made in the interim. Yeah, but so the next one is, maybe you can answer this, it's this hatchery. It's another public, it's a UOG and the private company's agreement, yet you're coming to the taxpayers to fund it, I guess, and I'm curious, is that the deal? Is you would continue to need funds from the general fund to continue this partnership?
So just to address the idea of public-private partnerships, it takes a while before there's a return. So the first one we've ever had is the hatchery, and it's related to our federal research activity over decades. So that's where that one's why that's in a different category. But that's not going to make much of a difference to us in terms of revenue for a number of years because it takes a number of years for it to work out. So some of these things, and this is a problem, I suppose, for all university things, is that most things take a number of years. Like we can address the expense of travel nurses, but we can't address it in 1 year. We need several years to get this to work. Eventually, all of Guam will benefit a lot from very high quality nurses, homegrown, home trained. The money will stay here and we won't send it off island, but we can't do it this year, right? It's going to be multiple years. The ARP money is great, and we intend to use it in the most useful way possible, but we can't use that money to fill the hole in the pro-tech, because one pro-tech person is going to take 3 or 4 years to finish a program, 4 for medical school, and so we can't commit to somebody to start that without knowing that it's going to continue. So the rescue money could do something in a year or two, depending on I'm not even quite sure how long we're allowed to expend it yet. So that'll be a question that the Treasury Department needs to help us understand. But many of these things take time to apply. And then in terms of the student financial aid, and Mark could comment further, some of the programs in student financial aid we must do because the legislature has directed it in law that we must spend this. And there are other things where there's some discretion. And so as the required things take up more and more of the total, it reduces the size of what's left in the discretionary ones. So ProTech is one of those discretionary things. There's not money available, so we can't spend it. Social work is in that discretionary thing. We'd love, if you want to appropriate more funds for social work, for ProTech, we would love to spend that money, and we will use it to very good effect and get people from Guam trained and then back here and serving our people. But it's a matter of funding. And then you also brought up the issue about the tuition increase. So we'll get you the figure for exactly what it would be. If you want to appropriate that and compensate, we already have a model of doing that because we used our institutional portion of the CARES Act to do exactly what you're proposing, which is to essentially waive the tuition fee raise during the pandemic because of the effect of the pandemic. So we're happy to do those things. It's just these are the only levers we have to compensate for a decline in the public support for the university. So public-private partnerships will make a difference, but it's not going to make millions of dollars of difference. It'll make thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference. It'll help us to achieve sustainability goals, reduce our electricity, reduce our carbon footprint, in the case of the Siemens project. The aquaculture will help improve our food security in Guam. It'll provide, some seeding for some new diversified economic activity. So it's going to pay off in lots and lots of different ways, but it's not going to compensate for a 30% reduction in the basic appropriation for the university. So we still really, really depend on your support for the basic funding of the university, and then we can do amazing things above and beyond that with the help of everybody we've got, faculty, students, alumni, the community, and partnerships across the region.
And Madam,
yes.
if I could just jump in, you'd raised the issue of the hatchery funds. That's only for any funds that we get from the legislature related to the hatchery will be used for scholarships for grad students working on issues related to the hatchery. There's no structural money or operational money that we're putting into that. That's all on the private partner.
All right, then that's a good explanation. I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you, of course, all the uses that you've outlined today are good. I don't have an objection to them. My issue is priorities. If you have a certain amount, I would like to see prioritized when the legislature says we need teachers, that is prioritized and that it doesn't get zero funding or reduced funding to the teacher corps. And when the legislature recognizes the need for nurses, that we prioritize those. And above the other things that the legislature does not say we must fund. And there are some in your list of financial aid that are not mandatory as well. And so it is a choice by UOG to do that. The other thing is, I don't know, I looked at what you outlined today for your expenditure of the CARES, and is UOG receiving 12 million in emergency grants under the ARP, the American Rescue Plan?
No, for now. I think so.
That's the amount that's been allocated to us, yeah.
Yeah, and that none of that can be used to cover whatever costs it is that is driving your tuition increase?
So the tuition and your appropriation fund, the main thing that those things fund is our salaries, it's personnel. So about 80% of a university's expenses are personnel. So, and personnel are, $12 million today, I can't do much with that if it's only for today, right? So it's a lot of one-time funds, and we're all going to have this trouble. There'll be a lot of things we're getting a lot of money for, and we need to figure out what to do with it in a short-term sort of way. Our request does not include very many sort of one-time purchases or equipment or any of that sort of thing. So our basic, with the flat appropriation that we're asking for, it's basically funding the faculty. It's funding the salaries to make this go. And so the 12 million, if we could spend it over 5 or 10 years, we might be able to fund this. Just as we could fund, if we could stretch it over 4 years, we could fund some pro-techs. We could send people for a whole program and be confident that we could fund them through their MD program or JD or whatever it is. But we can't, on one-time money in 1 year, handle that problem, right? And so, and Mark could remark further on the, if you want, on the student financial assistance programs about some of it being required and some of it not. And so that squeezes out and it forces choices to be made in there. So I think you'd probably approve of zeroing out pro-tech in order to preserve some funding for teachers, for nurses, for social workers. But there's just a limit. I mean, if we just have this amount of money, X amount must be committed for certain things we're directed to, and the remainder we have to make judgments about what we can support. So maybe
Dr.
Enriquez.
Yes, Madam Senator, thank you. Half of that 12 million will be direct student aid. That goes directly to students. And of course, the other half is going to be prioritized. I think if we take a look at the American Rescue Plan dollars serving as a possible bridge for our island to take us through the next year as an example. And there could be some ways in which we can sort of supplement whatever shortfalls there are as part of that bridge period until our island gets back on its feet economically. But I just wanted to say that for those particular awards to which the University of Guam has purview, that we are looking at some of those, including the Regent Scholars Award program, and to see how we can prioritize that to free up more money for like social work and other prioritized needs. We were trying to be creative with the Merit Scholarship Award the other year. We found a way to basically save almost $500,000 with having students pursue Pell Grant first, but that certainly was changed. And so we didn't have that $500,000 savings that we were going to direct towards other awards that were priority as well. So we are constantly looking to see how we can make this work. We certainly appreciate the concern and certainly the opportunity of new funds that have come under the ARP. Thank you.
And Madam Speaker, if I may, part of our decision-making, especially things like in the teaching program, so we don't totally not give support to students. So in our teaching program, for example, they are eligible for the federal program called the Teach Grant, which gives them the $2,000 per semester if they are pursuing a high needs area, almost similar to what we have in the Teacher Corps. I think one of the reasons why we chose not to award is we have to make sure that when we award a student that we can award them for the totality of the program. To only give them a year, for example, because maybe the following year we don't have enough funds, will be really a disservice to the students. So the program, like the Regent Scholarship, are often a one-time or a two-time award. And all of these the scholarships money that's appropriated in SBAP actually goes back to our students. And only less than, as limited in the budget law, only 10% of that is used for operations. So all of the funds, and we are running deficits right now with our SBAP programs. So we're getting some of our funds from the general UOG fund to keep those awards coming. But most of those, or all of those monies and more is actually just directed to students. So we are in this coming fall semester, when we did a proposal to the SBP to change some of the Regent Scholarship rules and regs to that allow us then to move some of those funds into social work and to teaching. So in the fall, we will be opening the application for the teacher scholarship and also for social work. It may not be the same level as we had 2 to 3 years ago, but at least we'll have those awards again for those students. ProTech may not be in the cards unless we do get some of the funds from the governor, which we requested, because they're just too expensive right now. At $20,000 per year for regular ProTech program and $35,000 per year for medical field, we really don't have the funds to make awards. Thank you.
Thank you. In your FY20 report, you reported for nurses training, 201,000 was spent in scholarship. For Regent scholarships, 547. And then in FY21, it looks like for all the health professions training together, which includes the nurses training and social work, which you said is at zero, you budgeted 275,000. And for the Regent Scholarship Program, 300,000. So I do hope that you do make those changes that you're talking about. And this thing about, we're increasing tuition, but we're going to give the students the money from the ARP, I guess, I don't know. It's the same thing, I guess, that what happened with the CARE. Some of the fees were increased, and then they had to use their money to pay increased fees and now increased tuition. So the direct aid that they're getting is to pay UOG.
Yes. The university used the institutional portion or its share to cover those fees and to cover that tuition increase. So the students did not have to use their award for any of that.
But the fees and tuition are increased, so.
Right.
Yes, okay, so going forward, they will have to.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and we have surveyed our students. We survey them regularly to find out why aren't they coming back. And the financial reason wasn't at the top of the list. They're just burnt out from the pandemic. And so even though there was a 5% increase that kicked in last fall or found in 2020, that really wasn't the basis for the 400-some students not returning. The bulk of it really was they were just they were exhausted by the virtual instruction and the other issues they were faced with during this pandemic. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Mr. Chair, just to end up, we're looking across the government for everybody to use their federal funds that are coming in to make some systemic changes so that the cost of living can be impacted, does not have to rise, and that we can actually, see improvements. And so I'm really very much hoping that UOG can do the same, and that, we're not going to see at the end of this just tuition was raised, fees were raised. I don't know if salaries are being raised, but that, the long-term, I don't know. When you say we could have nurses in many years, after this, we've been wanting, the government of Guam, before my time, wanted nurses and put those programs into place. And I'm just saying that the reprioritization of that money is a shame because, you know, we could have built those programs up more prior to today. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe on the prioritization of what program will be funded, we'll maybe have to just dictate it and then we'll move on from there. Senator Tello, do you, before I ask you questions, I'd like to recognize other colleagues. Senator Brown has joined us, Senator Moylan, and Senator Meritorious. Senator Tello, you have the floor.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And good afternoon to the university president, as well as everyone here today, and all the staff that is behind you that makes the University of Guam strong, and greatly appreciate all their hard work. I do have a question with regards to the presentation that you provide us. It doesn't have a page number on, but it's the part that says CARES Act expenditures, that section right there. Can you kind of explain to me where it says institutional support, and then you have in parentheses, lost revenues. Can you kind of explain lost revenues, meaning revenues that come into the University of Guam that you're able to use this CARES Act money to cover that?
I'll let Randy answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like one program we have that brings revenues into the university that we count on every year is the Global Learning and Engagement Program, where they bring in students from Japan, from Korea, to have English language immersion experiences on campus. And so they can use our facilities, they can use our faculty, and it brings additional revenue to the university. As soon as the pandemic hit, that stopped. And so lost revenues is an opportunity to be made whole for some of those things that were clearly affected. They were revenues that we had counted on that are clearly affected by the pandemic. Another example is the field house that a lot of weekends during the year we're able to rent the facility out for special purposes. And we get revenue from that. But again, as soon as the pandemic hit, we lost that revenue source. So the Department of Education has allowed us to seek to reimburse ourselves for those types of revenues that have been made unavailable because of the pandemic.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much. Also, Dr. Kreis, can you tell me on the, or Randy, yourself, you know, as I look at the budget digest here, there's a section for special funds. I do know that we do kind of a pass-through with the tourist attraction from going to Guampedia. I think we have the Territorial Trust Fund as well. But those are small amounts compared to what's in the special fund in the digest here, where it says salaries at $9,329,241. What special fund do you receive this money for salaries?
Gosh, yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about with the digest.
Okay, put it this way, do you receive any special funds other than for the Cancer Care Fund, the Revolving Recycling Fund, and the Territorial Trust Fund? Do you receive any other special funds?
What about the island sustainability thing with the recycling fund?
Yeah, like there's
recycling fund?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, those are, so I'm sorry. That special fund is basically tuition that's received. So we count that separately from the appropriation money. And so that's just the way that we're classifying it, so that the...
So this doesn't come from a special fund as we know it.
Right.
This is actually from tuition.
Right.
I see. And how much of that, because right now I'm showing here a total appropriation of $15,744,138. How much of that is from tuition?
That's all from tuition.
This is all from tuition?
Yes.
So you received a little bit more in 2020 for tuition?
That's correct. That's correct.
Or, I'm sorry, looks like a little bit less. I'm so sorry. 2020, you received $15,608, so about $100,000 less. And then it's anticipated in FY 2022 requested amount is $16,441,548. So we're looking at a difference here of about $1 million plus. So is that the anticipated amount of what you're projecting from the tuition increase?
It's tuition, and we're expecting that we're going to get some student enrollment boost also.
So about a $1 million increase in tuition. I'm trying to do the math here with regards to this new amount of funding that's going to be coming in from raising the tuition for our students on Guam during a really trying time when almost 24 people are out of a job right now, and it just seems unrealistic right now for you to do any kind of, tuition increase at this time. And I was just trying to look at this, and it's showing about $1 million plus.
Yes.
Okay.
But we anticipate students coming back too. So we had 450 students who didn't continue their studies, and our survey suggested it was mainly because of exhaustion about the pandemic. So we anticipate that group coming back, and so that'd be a significant portion of that amount as well.
Right, you said, yeah, and it said, Dr. Kreis said 470, I'm sorry, maybe Anita mentioned this, but about 457 dropped from the enrollment from prior year. So of course, COVID happened, and in the event these numbers come back up and surpass 457 on enrollment, then maybe you don't need to increase the tuition. The students are going to come back to cover that shortfall instead of having to raise the tuition. So I'm just hoping it's not, put in stone right now, or there could be some way to rescind this and allow another year of relief for our people and our students. It's just disheartening, because we do everything we can here to try and help the University of Guam, and I understand that you too as well. I mean, I was a big advocate on that Pell Grant, scenario with the merit scholarship. I mean, you saw us on the session floor. I voted against that, the bill to reverse it and bring it back to allowing the merit scholarship instead of using the Pell Grant first, which gives us a lot more funding to be utilized for other scholarships, for the nursing program. I mean, that's what I fought for on the session floor. If we'd have just, had the votes for that. Maybe I'll think about doing it again this time, because it's obvious you still are in dire need of these scholarships. And the ProTech, it is expensive, but we don't have a medical facility here that teaches, people to become doctors. And if we don't do that, we're looking at the healthcare. This is the opportunity to send our children, off island to these medical universities. Okay. The last question I have is regarding the G3 initiative. In your proposal, are you requesting, again, $500,000 for well, from what I gather, you didn't even know there was a $500 request coming from the revolving recycling fund into the G3 initiative into the University of Guam. Is that your your thought this year, or is that your request to take another $500,000 from the revolving recycling fund for this G3?
And that's for the Center for Island Sustainability and for the G3 program. So that's another example of something we are carrying out at the university on behalf of other aspects of Gov Guam. So it's separate from our basic operations. So, but yes, we are. That's one of the special appropriations.
We didn't know about that until just a couple months ago. So when we were putting in this budget, we didn't put in $500,000 for G3.
Okay, that's my question.
But
right. Your part of your budget request did not include $500,000 from the resort, or I guess in your binder that you provided every one of us, right?
Yeah, we had received some information in March after we filed this in February, and so in March that we qualified for additional purposes under. And we're qualifying for more grant money from related to the G3 program. And so It's just recently that UOG's been working with the governor to try to find the additional $500,000 for that program, and so that we'd have a better chance of getting the grant that would fund that sustainability initiative.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time and all your energy that you put into your budget. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Tello. Senator Tony, do you have any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Kreis, and to the UOG team, thank you for being here to present your budget request to the Guam legislature. I know this past year has been very challenging, and not just for the university, but also for the students of the university. And I just want to let you know that, you have my commitment that I will work with your oversight chair and our budget chairman to do what we can to keep the university affordable for the students, but yet at the same token, working to ensure that you're able to get your funding to keep your operations going. It's important that we keep the university sustained, especially here in our area, right? A lot of students are not able to afford to go off island any longer for college, so we want to make sure that our higher institute of learning is able and ready to accept all these students that want to come to the university. And like I said, you have my commitment, and I will continue to work with both chairs to a positive result in the end for this upcoming budget. Thank you, sir. Thank you to the UOG team. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tony. Senator Chris, do you have any questions, sir?
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity for comments and questions. And to Dr. Kreis, Dr. Enriquez, Mark, and Randy, thank you, and all the team that's out there to support you. First of all, I want to thank you for the meeting that we had. It was a very thorough presentation on all that the university is doing, and it's certainly not lost on me in terms of your discussion of the revenue that you generate through the graduates and the career and educational programs that you support, and the students and the people that with the education that you produce that provide for our people, particularly nursing, teaching, and all other professions. So I appreciate the continued work that you folks are doing. I want to thank David Okada as well for doing the follow-up that I asked in terms of the university's efforts between the University of Guam and Department of Agriculture, continuing to fight against invasive species, and the details of Dr. Moore and their efforts there, and possible funding in the future that we can work on together, but that's for another time. President Kreis, I think it is important, because I asked you this question, and I'd like you to give a more thorough answer in balance to what's being discussed here in your budget and your discussion about hopefully an eventual return to funding levels. But once again, I appreciate this presentation you've made that I think is very fair and very representative of a lean budget and basically a status quo budget. But we're hearing from educational institutions this term maintenance of effort. And I think it's important, as we discussed in our meeting together, that you expand upon that and what that means to the University of Guam.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So maintenance of effort we hear most often in current climate over the federal relief funds of different kinds, and that the expectation is that the local government will maintain the same level of funding for educational agencies as recent years. The other way that you hear maintenance of effort is for accreditors, grantors, and even organizations making loans like the USDA, where they pay attention to what's happened over time to the level of support for an institution. And so that's another way that if you see it declining, and we've had now 5 years of very steep decline in the Gov Guam support for the university, that raises red flags. So the accreditors, it raises red flags for accreditors. We saw the problem we had with the USDA loan. They raised questions about whether Gov Guam was good for the loan in this situation, because this looks like a declining interest in supporting the university. So those are places where maintenance of efforts, you'll hear that as well. And so I think it's important to pay attention to that. And what we need to do is to restore the previous level before this period of precipitous disinvestment in the university to get back up to a level. And I know there'd be a concern about, oh, are we just, the university is going to forever ask for increases and increases and increases. And I say that we've done an amazing job with that base level of funding over decades. So that the great stuff you're hearing about now is the result of decades of steady support from the legislature for this great work. And it's just this decline of the last several years is causing us problems. And I've compared it to a car running down the road that runs out of gas. It'll keep going for a little while after the engine stops. Just the momentum will keep it going. But, and so we're in that momentum now, but we're really nearing the bottom. And, everybody gets, prices go up for everything. We've all seen healthcare go up as a significant new expense. Everything gets more expensive over time. So we can't sustain this cut to the budget, to the base budget over time without something has to give at some point. And the pressure points are tuition, their programs, their student financial aid. These are the pressure points. So you're hearing about the pressure points and how we're trying to cope with that. And we began the School of Engineering, which is now quite successful. The first graduates are about to graduate. Hundreds of students are involved in this. Super enthusiasm from the construction and engineering industry in Guam. Great enthusiasm for that. But we launched that right at the beginning of this period of substantial disinvestment in the university. And it's expensive. Engineering schools are expensive to get going. And we've gotten loans, we've gotten grants, we've gotten contributions from engineering firms for equipment and so on, private funds to support our activities. But at the same time, we've been suffering this reduction in the support for the university at a time that we're launching this pretty expensive new thing. So I just call attention to those issues, and big funders, we've been getting really amazing funding, but they're paying attention to this and saying, how much support does the government, do the people of Guam give to the university, and can we count on that? So that's kind of the maintenance of efforts. Thank you for that question.
So I won't belabor the point, Dr. Christ, but I think it would be, effective for you if you want to do through this presentation. I know that maybe many of the senators were able to see it during your individual interviews, but there is quite a difference between what the University of Guam has taken in cuts as compared with the other educational institutions. Mm-hmm. So I want to say I support the budget that you've put forward today. And in closing, Randy, it was interesting as you were going through the renewables and some of the other contracts and public-private partnerships that are existent within the University of Guam. And one of the contractors that worked really hard for you on Facebook and all over anywhere on Guam that can be announced, they're advertising for engineers. They need all different project manager level engineers and everything else. And this is predominantly with regard to the buildup. Mm-hmm. What concerns me is even earlier with the GCC that came in and presented their budget, the federal government is shopping our talent. They're shopping our talent, off to this support for this buildup that's ongoing and what's going to be resulting in the end. Right now we have contractors and others that are coming in to support a lot of the efforts. If you go in and look at just the job announcements on the federal government, what's available after its military dependents and others, and jobs that are announced for Guam, the federal levels are so high, and they're going to be shopping our university students. So I think it's important, hopefully those will be mortgage jobs and they'll stay on Guam anyways, so that money will stay here. But I think it's going to be important that we understand exactly what you're doing as we go for economic diversification, but also just the reality of the emerging jobs as part of Guam's natural growth outside of this pandemic. So I thank you for your representation today, and I'll certainly advocate for the budget that you've requested. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Chris. Senator Sabina Perez, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here. Yeah, I was just looking over the budget digest, and I do have a question about how things are, the accounting of the salaries. So in the previous years, it was 15,841,364, and then it had additional itemizations of benefits. But when you come to this year's budget proposal, it lumps everything into one. And I'm just wondering, what is the reasoning behind that?
I'll defer to Randy.
Yeah, we can break that out for you if you'd like that. Yeah, there was no particular reason. We were just trying to make it a little bit more simple to fit everything on the same page. And but yeah, we can provide that for you.
So just a clarification, then the salaries are still the 15 million, and then the benefits are 10 million?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Again, and so in the general fund area, we have that's the money that's received from the appropriation, and the special fund portion, we're just trying to allocate to tuition, because for this budget, we get partly from the appropriation, partly from tuition, and I know that can be confusing at times, but yeah, it's just a matter of the way we were breaking that out. So the total for regular salaries is 24 million. The total for benefits is 10, and then the total combined is 35. And this is just a way that we were apportioning to try to focus on the idea that we keep saying that we rely on the legislature's appropriation for salaries, and so we just wanted to reflect that, and that's how we broke this out. But yeah, I think that's so.
So I think we're looking at two different sheets, because what we have here today, there's a sum here for general fund, and there's a sum here for special fund.
Right.
So it's two different things. There's no mixture of the two. So I just want clarification about, there's no benefits? Is that what you're saying with this particular submittal? It's all, so the salaries are, is it a lump, are you lumping all the benefits in that number?
But there's no benefits here.
The 10 million benefit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just
it's
looked at.
all clumped in.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. So it is, so as you can see, yeah, the 15 and the 10, I think that's your question, is that what we had asked for 21, and the way we broke it out for 21, 15 and 10, and so that remains approximately the same. So the benefits for 22 are all rolled into regular salaries, increments, and pay, and we can try to break that out better if that's if you'd like us to.
Yeah, I think that'd be better just to have that breakdown versus because what it looks to me is like there's no benefits.
Yep.
and it's all salaries.
Yep.
So I think it's more accurate. And then, you know, as far as the salaries for the general fund versus the special fund, what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, it's just a kind of an arbitrary breakdown. So again, the general fund is the appropriation, special fund is tuition, and we have one fund that we put all that money into. And so just for purposes of this presentation, we were just trying to, we took out a certain amount of salaries and benefits to be reflected from the general fund appropriation. But just to tie in with what we always say is that it's the appropriation that pays our salaries.
Okay, and then, so that leads me to the next question. So what are the guidelines for using the tuition funds received?
Again, we budget the appropriation and the tuition together. We take a budget to our board, and they authorize us to spend both in the same way, so that the same rules apply to both.
Okay, so then how did you come up with the 9 million number? There should be, if the board approves this, how did they get a 9.6 million for the tuition versus the 26.4 million from the general fund?
Yeah, and so the board didn't approve that. The board just approves one combined total. And so we just tried to fit it into this presentation that the legislature wanted. And we were trying to show that most of what we get from the legislature goes towards salaries and benefits.
Okay, so just to clarify, there is no procedure on how to use tuition funds?
It's all lumped together with tuition and the appropriation.
Can you estimate the lost revenues from prior fiscal year?
It's in the millions. It's probably 3 million-ish is our total lost revenues.
And earlier you were talking about the Global Learning Program and the UOG Fieldhouse as potential reasons why there's a lost revenue. Are there other reasons?
Those are the most significant. UOG Press wasn't able to do much this year. And it's because of the pandemic, but that's a much smaller number.
Dormitories, food.
Yeah, the president was just saying dormitories, food. Although we couldn't have 2 people per dorm room anymore, so we had to go with 1, and so there's a loss of revenue from that. But the most significant were the Glee and the field house.
Thank you. And how much vacancies do you have on?
In the dormitories, Senator?
Staffing.
Oh, yeah.
There's about 40 positions that we had said these will not be funded for FY22. On top of that, I think it's like 12 maybe positions that are, we felt like even though they're vacant, these have to be filled. We can't go on without them being filled. So there's a much smaller number of vacancies that we intend to fill, and then there's 40 that we've deferred.
All right, thank you. And then as far as salaries, what is the median salary for professional staff?
Yeah, I don't have that handy. I'm thinking that's probably in the 45 to 50 range.
Okay, thank you. And then also in the budget binder that you distributed, there's a big portion about fixed asset schedule, and I guess if you can explain the role in regards to the budget.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
There's a whole section in the binder regarding fixed asset schedule. And what is the role in the budget submission?
The appropriation doesn't really pay for any fixed assets.
Okay, I think this was in response to a request just for a listing of fixed assets. And, yeah, and yeah, again, we didn't ask for any funds for equipment, so this isn't, for us, this isn't related to a specific request for the appropriation.
All right, thank you for that. And then another question I have is, so are you aware of any indicators of what would drive or promote enrollment?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. What was the question?
Yeah, so it was earlier stated that there was a 26% drop in enrollment, and
not 26.
Oh,
It's
20,
not- no.
earlier it was, okay. Based on last year,
It's like
at the same
8%.
time? If that was correct?
Yes, that's, we compare, either spring to spring or fall to fall registration as of the close of business. So we compared May 14th of 2020 to May 14th of 2021. And we saw that there's a 21% decrease when you compare the two numbers.
Yes, thank you. And it just, because I think enrollment is an important factor, and I'm just wondering how are you going to address, or what are you doing to address this, and are there any indicators that you've identified that would help to promote enrollment?
Yeah, we have had in place the College Affordability Initiative, working very closely not only with the Financial Aid Office, but also with our UOG Endowment Foundation to ensure that we know what is available to students in the form of scholarships, and you couple that with the awards that are already earmarked from the SFAP funding. So we take that into consideration, and we certainly ensure that students, especially our incoming freshmen, are fully made known of the opportunities for funding. They are brought through the process. We do have a federally funded initiative called the Triton Advising Center, which is dedicated towards working with every single student across 3 different domains, one with regard to academic advisement, the second with regard to student financial assistance advisement, and the third component is the career advisement. And so we feel that with these interventions that we certainly will hope, including our recruitment efforts, to bring those numbers back up. Thank you.
And if I could just add that we've also made very good use of our AmeriCorps volunteers. So we have, I think, nearly 70 AmeriCorps volunteers who are working in our high schools as counselors, not necessarily promoting UOG explicitly, but encouraging students to be prepared for college wherever they go. So that's been also helpful. So.
And in addition, Senator, beginning with the 21-22 FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, in the American Rescue Plan, there is a provision that allows the financial aid office at every school to start reviewing each student's FAFSA. If their incomes were somehow affected by COVID, then we can go back and arrange, make some changes in the FAFSA so that a student may qualify for Pell Grants or additional Pell Grants. So the way that FAFSA works is in the 21-22 year, you're using 2019 taxes. So that's obviously before the pandemic. So we have a lot of students who have expressed that their parents or themselves have lost income. So with the 21-22 FAFSA, then they can ask for an adjustment on the income that they put in their FAFSA. So in essence, they could be eligible for that $6,000 a year in Pell Grant. So, when we start advertising that, we could get more students, to come back to school since their tuition might be paid by the Pell Grant.
So just to reiterate, they can qualify for 6,000 additionally for the Pell Grant? Is that what you just said?
The maximum amount in Pell is 6,000. It's a little bit higher this 21-22, but the way that you calculate Pell Grant is based on your income, but the way that current federal regulations work is you're using your 2019 information. So with this 21-22 year, they're allowing us to make adjustments. Students can appeal, or we can use their current income. So in most cases, if a student or their parents have lost income, they may suddenly be eligible for Pell.
This is Masi. So maybe just two more questions. The other question is, so the built-in 5% increase, I estimate it to be about $700,000 roughly. So what's the intent for using that fund?
Most of our tuition is supported, tuition and the general appropriation, most of it goes to salaries. So that's the basic thing. But we've had significant increases in, I mentioned healthcare costs have come up quite a bit, so that's a significant increase. Do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say that the increase is going to be in for, I had said earlier, it's the Fonachan, and I'd forgotten, it got moved back to the Fonam-Nakan semester, so the impact on the next year's budget is about $500,000.
Thank you for that. One more question then, in regards to special funds. So in your earlier testimony, you said that it was all from student tuition. So I think there's another area that needs to be highlighted is the other special funds, right? All these other special funds, including the recycling revolving fund and any other special funds out there, if it's not included in this. So maybe if we can get a breakdown of what's in these special funds or any kind of supplemental budget proposal and the breakdown on how it's going to be used.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. Thank you so much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parrish. Senator Mary Torres, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the information that you've provided to all of the respective senatorial offices when you were formulating your budget. I think a lot of the information that you presented here was also vetted. But I do want to comment that I believe that the discussion about tuition increases and the effect of tuition increases on students needs to be better communicated by the university, because it is clear to me, and I was actually quite surprised at when there was the CARES Act funds that came in, a great bulk of those expenditures went directly to grant aid to students and reimbursements to students, including the student share and the institutional share. So it is without doubt that the university has in mind the interest of the students in wanting to ensure that they are given some relief throughout the crises and that they're able to maintain their pursuit of studies at the university. And that is very clear. I think what is not so clear to many perhaps, and I'm just getting this sense, is the maintenance of effort rules and how they apply to recurring expenses and how they are applied to direct aid, the CARES aid. And I think we need to have a clear delineation about how those monies can be used present to address the crises and the COVID situations and the gaps, and how they can apply going forward. And I think, Dr. Enriquez, you were very good about explaining when we had our meetings about the supplant versus supplement versus supplant, and that one is not intended to make up in the long term for recurring expenses. It's just used for really to make up for the gaps in the emergency COVID. So I say that because in going forward, I know that the efforts for additional student aid, grants, working with Pell Grants, any available monies that can be given to the students to relieve them of the burden of tuition continues to be a priority of the university. And that's one thing that I noticed. But I just would like to, I don't know if you want to comment further, if I've been clear about it, but I think that that's the one missing piece in the discussion is how far can the CARES Act go in terms of supplanting the budget going forward. In other words, what are the clear-cut rules for how that money can be used and how it cannot be used? Because that, I think, that seems to be something that many believe should not trigger a tuition increase, which we know is almost a guaranteed for educational institutions year upon year across the nation. I've never heard of a university that didn't have some incremental or planned tuition increase year after year. So if you care to comment, because I just feel that we're not giving you enough credit for your consideration of that angle of your budget.
Thank you, Senator. We took into consideration for the receipt of, we called it CARES 1, which was last year, late spring of 2020. CARES 2 came in around January of this year. And so we took into consideration the term of whatever was left in the academic year. And so we figure with CARES 2, that would take us into the summer. The American Rescue Plan, with the approximately $6 million for the institutional share, not including the $6 million that goes straight to students, there is a lot of emphasis to try to get as much help to the students with the institutional share. That said, we still have a need to outfit our classrooms, not just for the PPEs, but also with the right technology to allow what we call high-flex course offerings. That is to allow both in-person as well as remote instruction to take place simultaneously, because the spatial distancing in terms of safety protocol measures are still in place. We cannot permit everybody to come in the same level, at the same level that we did pre-COVID. And so much of this restriction, again, focuses on making sure that the continuity of operations for the academic enterprise, and we're talking about making sure that faculty are taken care of, the equipment needs are taken care of, the training is provided as well, at ensuring that if there's additional aid that the students need over and beyond the $6 million student relief award, that we actually go out and make sure that those students are taken care of. So this is on top of the increase that is anticipated in the Pell Grant Award, in terms of the maximum Pell Grant Award for students coming into the upcoming academic year. So a lot of emphasis. We constantly, or we regularly survey faculty as well as our students with regard to what is their current situation, and to help guide us in terms of our planning and our prioritization. Thank you.
Thank you. I was very impressed with your physical capital outlay plans and the 7 different areas of improvement and expansion that are happening at the university. I did note, however, in your general operations budget under expenses, under operating non-personnel expenses, the majority of the bulk of the $6.5 million was for utility expenses. But the number that struck me as being very low was the capital outlay for repair and maintenance. And I wanted to ask you, President Christ or Randy, I recall in budgets past how there was grave discussion about how the underfunding of the university was compromising the infrastructure, critical infrastructure, to include everything from AC equipment to plumbing and the like. And I understand you're being frugal and you're considering your personnel as many budgets are. They fund warm bodies first. But can you comment on that budget of $100,000 for capital outlay for repair and maintenance for the entire university campus?
Thank you, Senator. I'll have Randy add on, but just to remark that this is a tough budget to ask for. And we're asking for a flat one because we know you have a hard year. We all have a hard year ahead. This is going to be a hard year to maintain. But last year and this year, that level of funding is really seriously inadequate. So that's 40 positions we can't fill. That's almost nothing spent on basic maintenance and upkeep, certain safety things and so on. So this is a seriously bare bones budget that we're operating under. And so you're just seeing the example there of one of the things that we're cutting back on in order to cope for this year. We're hoping that this will be the bottom and that we'll all crawl out of the hole that we're in. And we're hoping that the legislature will begin to reinvest in the university and to restore the base level that we had before this 5-year period of serious decline. That serious decline is about 30%, so that's a serious decline in support, and we need to have that built back. And so Randy might add a bit.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just that when funds aren't available, the easy thing to cut is to say, well, we're not going to do the capital renovations, the improvements, and some of the maintenance. And yeah, like what the president said, is that this was, if we cut a faculty, then we're cutting ourselves in the foot. This is an area where we can, we've cut, and we're hoping we can gamble and get through a year before we can start to improve our funding for these maintenance issues.
Thank you, and I know it is a challenge, especially when you're adding to your facilities footprint, and at the same time you're crawling, trying to ensure the integrity of your existing ones. So I certainly can appreciate your great dilemma and sacrifice in that regard. I don't have any other questions. I think you've done a good job of answering all the other questions of the other senators. And also, I just want to iterate that your briefing to us was very beneficial as well ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Mary. Senator Jim Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard earlier in the presentation that 40% of our students are on Pell Grant, all right? And then just recently, I'm understanding that there may be an adjustment instead of looking at your taxes for 2019, that it can be looking at 2020. And this will reflect those folks that have been affected by COVID. So, which would help the students afford if they qualify for the Pell Grant. Are you expecting an increase of that 47% on the Pell Grant to increase, or is there a way to project that?
Hi, Senator. We are expecting an increase. We have been getting a lot of inquiries into FAFSA, completed FAFSAs, and asking if they can use their most current income instead of the 2019. And when the ARP was passed and there was that provision, we can now tell students that we can do that adjustment for them. The only issue that we'll be facing is that we have to do the adjustment on a one-by-one, case-by-case basis. So we're asking students to start doing their FAFSA early so that if there's adjustments that are needed, we can get those adjustments done before the beginning of the semester.
because of course that would help them afford their tuition, and that would be great if we're able to increase that. I think 47% that was good, and if we can get that even higher, that would be nice. Of your total population, probably half of them could qualify for the Pell Grant if they do complete it correctly with the assistance of you folks. So I'm glad to hear that. Also for reinvesting back into our students and helping them afford the college. You mentioned the student financial aid and the disinvestment that we've been doing from the legislature side, and you're asking just a modest $4.03 million to help, and then you can help focus into the courses in education and nurse and social work. But I really appreciate that you stress this to us so we can help the students, again, afford one thing, the Pell Grant, and then the student aid, again, another affordability for the students. The one I'm concerned of is what you mentioned on the budget request, where you really highlight, and I like the point of highlighting in extra bold, extra big, the two main important things: restoring our capital improvement fund and debt service for things that, you know, we incurred that obligation, and then we said for that USDA loan for the engineering annex and the student success center, and we appropriated $1.5 million, but we never really, I guess, did it over the years, starting back in 2015. Is that correct? And then we kind of give a little bit here and there, but in FY21 we did zero as well. So, and then they took away this. USDA took it away and then decided to give it back. So you're really looking for that obligation, because this is the red flag that you're talking about. If you want to come to the federal government to say, hey, we want to do this, but if we're not supporting you, you know, it's like we're just stealing their money because we're not going to pay it back. So they got better places to invest their money, right? And I think the college is doing such a wonderful job in getting all these other grants and competing with all these universities nationwide. Then I really hope that we can support, and I want to push that we do support you to get this. And I think with the additional assistance on the Pell Grant and the student aids, that we can make this affordable for our students. So I thank you very much, and I do support you on your budget request. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Senator Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Jim. Senator Joanne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully you saved me for last this afternoon, after we've almost doubled the time the Guam Community College had their hearing earlier this morning. Certainly thank you, Dr. Kreis, and members of your staff from the University of Guam. Also, along with my other colleagues, appreciate the time you took to provide us a briefing. I was able to talk with you collectively last week to discuss your budget, so I thank you for that. As mentioned by Senator Moylan, I was looking at that. In the event that this $1.16 million that you're looking at for your capital improvement fund is not provided, what impact would that have to the university?
Yeah, we're really hoping we can get a sense from the legislature, because we're going to be asked to sign a note in the next few weeks. And as we expressed to the chairman, that we won't, I mean, we probably won't start drawing down much in this current fiscal year, and so we'll start drawing down in FY22. What we draw down, we'll pay interest only on, so the debt service requirement for FY22 is going to be fairly small, but then after that, it's going to go up. So we'd like to get, if we could get something for that in FY22, we'd be happy. I think we can deal with it. If we don't, I think it'll be hard. But if we get something, that would be helpful. But the real need is to make sure we can get and we understand things are really, really hard this year. But we are going to have to sign this note, and we're trying to rely on the appropriation that was made back in, I think it was 2014. And if we can't rely on that, we need to know that. But yeah, we're going to be, if we sign this and it comes through by FY23, if we don't have that, we're going to be in a difficult position, and that'll give us more pressure to increase tuition again, because I think that's the only other place we could go to get this.
Well, and I certainly can't explain as to why there's been inconsistency in funding this for the last several years, but understanding moving forward, if you do enter in this commitment, I mean, it's a hopeful expectation that the funding will be consistently provided as any other long-term debt or obligation of the university. With regards to the appropriation of WERI, and I'm relaying this to my colleagues because there's been a lot of attention paid lately with regards to the quality of our drinking water, and certainly concern about activity and construction of the military with regards to our Northern Guam waterlands. I didn't vote for that most recent resolution because I felt if we were going to talk about safe drinking water, we needed to talk collectively in terms of adverse impacts that are happening just simply by our own human occupation and other activities that are not properly enforced with regards to activities in Northern Guam waterlands. So certainly, I'm going to point this out with the budget and with the chairman. I'd love to see an increase in appropriation to WERI, primarily because of the work that is being done at the University of Guam, not just to do the research and the profiling and the management of our waterlands, but certainly the students that are educated in this program to become experts in the field of water research. So I certainly would love to see that commitment that my colleagues have talked so openly about in supporting that advocacy, to see that support for increasing the appropriation of WERI. Then also with regards to the Guam Culture Repository, this $1.46 million primarily I see is just to staff. Provide the staff that you need to actually operate the repository. And moving forward, is this what you're looking at? It would be an annual appropriation, if not slightly increased, just because of insurance and things of that nature that come in the course of having staff. Was
Yes,
that
Senator.
something
Yep.
discussed with the university at the time when the idea was made to locate it at the University of Guam? Because this pretty much now is not, build it. We love building things, but we do a lousy job of maintaining them and funding them after we do so. What were your thoughts on that with regards to this being added to the university inventory, so to speak?
Thank you, Senator. I think the team that involves, it's ADALOOP, it's Department of Chamorro Affairs, it's SHPO, it's the UOG, that whole team was aware back even in 2011 that the deal was that DOD would build it and they would allow it to be built outside the fence, which was a big deal for them at the time. They said, okay, we'll build it. Then there was the issue of where do we put it? And so the proposal to put it on campus was the winning proposal. And then the idea was that UOG would manage it, and the combination of the the Micronesian Area Research Center, that capacity would make it much more than just a storage facility. It would be a real place for study and preservation, a great adjunct to the Guam Museum, education. I mean, I've daydreamed about having busloads of high school students coming through and just seeing this kind of work and what it takes to do this. What do you need to know to learn how to do this sort of work? Anyway, so the idea was that this is to be a much, much more significant thing than the original idea. And so it was always understood that this would be a Gov Guam obligation. The issue was which agency would be managing the money. Since it's put on campus, we are the idea is we would manage this, but we're just saying this is one of those things that the university does on behalf of Gov Guam, and we don't want it to be commingled or confused with the basic operations and the basic educational function. But we do anticipate that this will continue indefinitely. And I certainly support any effort to get other funds. We've already gotten some grant funds for materials for this already, even on the prospect of it. So I think this will present opportunities for grant funding, but we are, as a community, as a government, obligated to run it for 30 years as the original plan.
I'm hopeful certainly this fiscal year that we'll be able to meet your budget. I understand that this is your request, and ultimately as we look at the rest of Government of Guam and look at the numbers, certainly my concern is even more so next year and the year after. We're living in a very artificial economy right now, and aside from wearing these masks and being inundated with discussions about COVID and the unfortunate impact to those in our community that have suffered from it, and even more so those that have passed away, we're not living in the real world right now financially, primarily just because of the huge cash infusion by the federal government that we've been given. But when the time comes, unless they continue to provide these large amounts in the next year or two, the concern is our ability to bridge over with the buildup back in of our local economy if and when tourism does come back, and other support businesses that contribute to the revenues that are received by the government of Guam. Has the university also looked at potential contingencies? I mean, we know what it is we want and need at a bare bones level to operate, but in the event next fiscal year you get a decrease, what are your steps, and just in general? I mean, of course, you're not looking at specific numbers right now, but just, government-wide, we probably should be looking at potential contingencies just in the event, as we anticipate. If we're reliant on our own local economy, we're going to be in big trouble right now without the federal infusion. Is that something you guys have had in discussion as well?
Thanks, Senator. We certainly have prioritized the positions needed to run it at full operation, and so the funds for this year that the Lieutenant Governor's indicated he might be able to support with ARP funds is $688,000 for the first 4 positions, and so there's a sense of sort of levels of need in order to operate, so there would be a sense of that. But I think our situation is we have this obligation we all have made with the DoD in order to build the thing. So it's sort of our part of it is to run it at this level, at this standard for 30 years is the idea. So I suppose we certainly could do that if it comes down to that, but it would be a breach of the agreement with DoD for the $12 million for building it. So we'd rather not think too hard about that, but we could.
Yes, and that would just be for the repository, but just in general for the university as well. Is that something you guys are also
we did
looking
actually
at?
go through. Our board asked us to do some contingency planning about sort of crisis planning for higher ed problems, and universities across the country, public and private, have been through this. A number of the privates have had to do some serious layoffs and serious contractions, and you're going to see more of that happening. So in many ways, the federal funding is kind of buoyed, as you say, made a sort of artificial buoying, and so we're managing very well given the situation, but we do anticipate challenges ahead as that money runs out. So.
Well, and even though you've had, a slight decrease in the amount of students that are actively enrolled in the university, I mean, sometimes that doesn't change the overall cost of maintaining, managing the university. I mean, some of those costs don't disappear regardless of your student population. But overall, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you've been very thorough with regards to providing that. Certainly thank you to all of you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Madam Speaker, you had one alibi.
Thank you. Did you say that the governor was going to cover the $688,000 with ARP funds?
There's an indication that we have this need because we're supposed to, part of our agreement is we have to have personnel in place and trained, and we have to have a schedule set up for moving the remains and the materials from all their different locations. We have to do all of this so many months ahead of time. So we're running up to a real serious problem where we really have to hire these 4 people. We need their equipment, computers, software, boxes, chemicals, those kinds of things.
That's for the repositories. Were you promised any other ARP funds?
That's the only one I'm aware of. So.
All right. I just wanted to make a comment, and I asked the chair if I could regarding this. Several times today you've repeated there's a decline in government support. There's a disinvestment. There's a reduction. And I really want to object to that because I think across the government of Guam, the University of Guam, we made cuts in 2018 because of the Trump tax changes across the government of Guam. And according to the OFB, the reduction to University of Guam since 2015 is this capital improvement fund that did not go forward. But other than that, there's, like I said earlier, there's been bill after bill after bill for University of Guam to give benefits to the university that are not given anywhere else on Guam or to any other agency. For example, transferring land to the university. We don't do that with all these other agencies to add to your portfolio, to add to the endowment fund's portfolio, to allow you to enter into public-private partnerships with them, to allow exemptions from procurement and other personnel in regards to the Research Corp that was just a few years ago passed. It's the government of Guam that funds the scholarships every year. And I don't know, I just feel like the people of Guam have invested a lot in the University of Guam, and while there may be decreases, sometimes, I don't think it is a pattern that amounts to being described as a disinvestment in the university or a decline in government support, as if it's a trend that is exceptional for the University of Guam. As you pointed out, across the nation, all of the universities are suffering because of increased costs, I think, and governments trying to stay afloat. And I don't know, I just think that if you look across the government at the sacrifices that some of the other agencies have had to make, or the programs that we have had to not put in place because of, the priorities that we just have to make, I just think, I don't know, I just don't want it to be described as like that. And I think that is very unfair to the people of Guam who have been supporting the University of Guam, and the legislature has gone out of its way to make sure that the university is taken care of. And of course, to try to allay tuition increases that continue to come up at the burden on the students. I don't think that's fair. And I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair.
So a data point on that, if I may, would be just from 2008 to 2021, the legislature's support for the university has dropped 7.9%. The other two educational institutions,
yes, if you compare to
GDOE
only
and
those
GCC,
two, Mr. Cripe, but
yes.
if you compare to the government of Guam and the reasons why the decreases were made or all of that, I think that there's a lot of room for discussion and debate on that. And all I'm saying is, I know you want to make a conclusion, and I feel like that's unfair if that's what you are perpetuating to the students, because I don't think it's the legislature that has decreased its commitment to the University of Guam students. I don't think it's the legislature that has proposed to increase or cut the certain scholarships that were mandated in the law. I don't think that's what's happened. And so all I'm asking is that if you refrain from describing it as a disinvestment of the university, because that is not at all what has happened on Guam. I don't see that. And I hope that the university has grown so much over the years with the support of the people of Guam, and I just hope that that can be recognized. It's been an investment that we have made, and we could always do better, and we're trying to do that while we are also taking care of the rest of the government agencies. And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to express that while the university is here, and we would like to fund everything, of course. They all have merit, all these programs, but I'm telling you, when we're trying to look across the government of Guam, I don't think that the university has been hurt compared to many, many other agencies, and I don't wish that to happen, and so we are trying to continue the people of Guam's investment in the university. And so all I'm asking is that we not describe it as a disinvestment, because if it offends me, I can imagine that it offends the people of Guam. I don't think that that's what has happened. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Amanda, before I close.
Thank you very
Oversight
much.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you also, Madam Speaker. I think it was this body in the last term and in this term that helped to reinstate the timely allocations for the University of Guam that passed the 21st century bill for the University of Guam. So certainly there is support here from this body to ensure that we're providing for our students. Before we end, I wanted to get some clarification on the proposed tuition increase for next semester. I know that you will provide us with the total cost that will bring the 5%. But I took a moment to look online at the 2019 rates and the 2020 rates. So the 2019 rates are currently $210 per credit hour, and the 2020 rate is $221 per credit hour. And I understand that with the CARES Act funding, we've been able to cover the $11 of the $221 per credit hour rate. So right now, students are continue to pay the $210 per credit hour. So if the 5% is to be raised, is it 5% on top of $210 or 5% on top of $220? And I ask this because I think it's going to be very important for students to know this. I don't want them to have sticker shock going into the next semester and somehow discourage them from continuing their studies or enrolling in the University of Guam, knowing that this could be a big difference for them for each credit hour. So if you can let us know.
Yeah, sorry, it's not the answer you want, but it's the 5% on top of the 221. And I did want to point out that we did give a 5% rebate with CARES 1. We gave a 5% rebate with CARES 2, and I'm expecting something similar will come once we get the rules for the ARP. So we are trying to be sensitive to that, but at the same time, we're really having difficulty with our funding and making ends meet.
Okay. Certainly not the answer that we want to hear. I do understand all of the big problems that we're facing together as an island community, and I want to reiterate the concerns of many of my colleagues today that if we are able to find any other kind of solution other than a tuition increase for our students, especially during this time, I ask that we consider those solutions first. So just Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Amanda. And I'd like to thank my colleagues for participating today and the panel from the University of Guam. University of Guam panel, most of us here, my colleagues, are alumni of UOG. So to think anything less of us is shame on you. Most of us have been to the University of Guam before some of you have even been there. So I'm going to leave that alone at that. But we'll end the budget hearing. I'd only ask that you provide the information that my colleagues have asked. Provide it to me, my office, my committee, and then I'll disseminate it to all the members of the 36th legislature. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. and Agustin at gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam, 96931. Si Jus Masi for attendance and participation in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing on Bill 55-36 COR relative to the University of Guam is now adjourned. It is now 4:36. Please drive safe and be safe. Thank you, Dr. Christ.